Hey, what's up guys? Morey Croson here, and today we're going to be going over 5 ways to help you better throw with the hips, and we're going to start the video right now.
This is the newest edition of the Perform Side.
Reach your individual goals. You don't want to just talk about straight line speed. We also want to talk about your ability to be quick. We break down your video. Let's make you into the quarterback I know you can become.
All right, so this is something that I think is been more important when it comes to throwing the football and generate more force, more velocity behind the throw. A lot of it ends up obviously being with how well can we utilize the lower body, and there's a lot of mistakes that I see that quarterbacks make that I think will really make a big difference in terms of how well you're going to be able to consistently add a lot of velocity into the throw and also to get a lot of distance into the throw. So we're going to go over those today. I'm going to try to simplify it the best we can because a lot of them really just go down to making these main 5 errors. Obviously there's more, but the first thing that I would say is just that front step, and this is probably the most important one, is with that front step, what are you doing with that foot? So some of the things that will make it so you basically can't use the back hip are going to be if this step ends up coming too much across here, and if this step ends up opening up too much. Okay, so if we open up here and even come across, now that really makes it difficult for me to be able to generate a good amount of force within the hips. I can open up my front foot by kind of stepping out to the side, and this still gives me the opportunity to generate more force within the hips. And then another thing that I think ends up being important with that is when we get this front foot down, we want to be able to get this down fairly quickly. We don't want to have a lot of time before this front foot gets down the ground. A lot of times the more time the foot is in the air, then the more we get kind of this landing, which makes it so now it's really hard to use your back hip, which is really the primary driver here. I mean, we talk about using your hips, but in order to really throw the ball well, it's really using that back hip to be able to do that effectively. So first thing is going to be that front step. We want to be able to slightly open it there, and we want to make sure that that foot gets down as quickly as we can, so then we can really start driving off of that back leg. Okay, so number 2 would be when that front foot hits, we want to be able to generate a good amount of rotation within this back leg. Okay, and the way to be able to do that is, one, we don't want to end up spending too much time loading into this back foot. The further the athlete has to throw, typically I'll see people really try to get like their knee to come out and they'll really sink down into this hip, and I do think that being able to understand how to load in that hip is important, but if you get too stuck back here, now a lot of times that ends up making it so this load ends up being really long, and then you'll end up wanting to use all arm or just try to get the momentum of just your body shift, right? It doesn't want to be a body shift when it comes to throwing the ball. That's going to be more of like a shot put. We want to be able to get more of like a rotational movement. So in order to do that, we have to load and be pretty quick to be able to start to rotate or pivot within that back leg. Okay, so number 2 would be quick with how fast we're starting to rotate within this back hip. Okay, we do want to be able to load into it, but let's stay away from getting too much of the knee going to the outside, too much of that front foot or that back leg kind of sitting back. Let's try to stay away from that. Instead, be fast and being able to start to rotate within that lower half. Okay, number 3 way to be able to more effectively use your hips when throwing the ball is going to be the front arm. Okay, keeping that front arm closed as long as you can, right? So there's this whole thing that is hip and shoulder separation. We've talked a lot about this on the channel, and the concept here is the better I can create rotation in my lower half, okay, then I want to be able to create separation in my upper body, which means that my shoulder, my front shoulder wants to stay back. So it's the separation of my hip rotating and my front arm staying back. This hip and shoulder separation has been proven to have a lot of correlation to increased ball velocity when it comes to throwing the baseball as well as the football. And so that ends up being a big goal that we want to be able to achieve, is being able to generate rotation here. Okay, but if we do that, or if we are opening up with our shoulders too early or getting this upper body involved too early, what that does is it takes our hips out of the equation. So we want to be able to maintain that front arm being back as we're starting to rotate in order to make it so now we can generate more force through there. Okay, number 4 is going to be really being active with that front hip and pulling it back. So not only are we trying to rotate here with this back leg, but we also want to be able to really pull back with this front hip to be able to generate rotation all the way through the movement. So we don't want to just have lower body rotation. We want to also be pulling back with that front hip as well as we're going through the throw to really, and this really increases that velocity. So if you're trying to throw the ball, 20, 25 yards and put that on a line, being able to generate a lot of hip rotation in your back and your front hip are going to be two critical parts in being able to make that happen. And then I would say the fifth thing that's going to most effectively help you with being able to better utilize your hips is going to be with your balance, making sure that we're not too early onto that front leg or trying to create too much extension within that front leg. Okay, so typically what we'll see is, and there's a few different ways of how this is going to end up happening, where, so if we're too early onto the front leg, then we'll typically see people want to fall off to the side. Okay, so if you see that, what that means is it's either you're too early or you're too late, right? So you're either too early, you're trying to shift too much weight onto your front leg. Sometimes we'll see that with people also wanting to hyperextend with that front leg. Okay, that's another way to know if you're too early shifting your weight forward, you're not really loading onto that back leg. Another big part of it's going to be how well, when we're getting that foot down, how well are we able to actually rotate within that lower body. So the more that we're just trying to push forward here, if we load really far into this back leg, sometimes we'll end up going off to the side, or if we're shifting too far forward and really just like pushing off that back leg, we could end up leaning off to the side, or we could also end up really hyperextending this leg and end up throwing like this. Okay, so the big point of this is with our weight distribution, we want to understand that as we're loading, we want to be loading here simultaneously, and then from this position, we've talked about this before, the process wants to be is we're loading, getting this front foot down. From here, we want hip rotation to happen, right? We want this front hip to start opening up, then we start to rotate within the upper body, and then we start coming forward with our momentum. Okay, so from here, and I rotate, I still want to have more of my weight on my back foot. So as long as you can, you want to be keeping your weight on this back foot. So then as I'm creating rotation, now I'm shifting my weight into this front leg. If I get my weight onto this front leg too early, that's when I'm going to hyperextend. That's when I'm going to lean over the side. That's when we're going to start to see a lot of these compensations that are really taking your hips out of the throw. So those are 5 things that I think will more effectively help you throw the football and really be able to use your hips when throwing the football. If you like that information, click that thumbs up down below, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations, you can leave those down below. As always, thanks for watching here. We have a ton of things in the description to help you as a quarterback to be able to continue to improve. But this is another just one of those great videos that I think can really help you better understand what you need to work on as a quarterback and really getting specific into these areas that will end up, I think, really allowing you to have more opportunity when it comes to putting more velocity on the ball, putting more distance on the ball. I always tell people, I wish that I had a coach that helped me with distance, right? That was like the big thing, is like I couldn't throw the ball far. I could throw the ball with good timing and, was able to manage the game well, was able to do a lot of things well as a quarterback, but just didn't have that necessary arm strength. And while I think my quarterback coach did a great job of helping me better understand some of the basics of like the release and accuracy and definitely helped me with my power, it wasn't a thing that was specific. And I think that really, I could have been a lot better if I would have put more time and more energy and more effort into being able to improve my throwing power, my throwing distance. And that's why I do this for you guys, so then you guys can more effectively throw the ball with more power. And I think a lot of colleges are looking for quarterbacks that have that ability to have a lot of power and distance and velocity on the ball. So I think the earlier you start to address that and start to work on it, then the better your overall results are going to be. Again, like the video, subscribe. Hope you like the information. We'll talk to you soon.